By the early 1980s, Subway had several hundred franchises across the United States, but it was looking to expand even further. Franchising internationally meant that millions more potential customers could be reached.
We thought to ourselves, we ought to grow outside the U.S., but we had no idea of what to do.
I'll never forget when I went to England with Fred for the first trade show. We went over there because they spoke English.
They weren't too interested. We didn't really come back with any results. Went to it their second year, and somebody said that they wanted to open a store in Bahrain, in Persian Gulf. And we just said, okay. And that was actually our first international store in Bahrain. A few years later, we thought, let's open a store in Canada.
Being Canadians, we're, very close to the American border, and the first time we actually ever saw Subway was traveling somewhere in the States. But when we went back to Canada, Winnipeg in Canada, we found out that the first one had actually opened in our city. So we made time at that point to find out who the development agent was, made an appointment to see him, and the rest is kind of history.
The Spears happily opened one Canadian franchise, then two. But for Subway, things on the international front were still touch and go.
In the beginning, it was simply opening where people suggested that we open, and we wound up with low density of stores in many countries around the world, and a team of field people really flying from place to place to help folks. It was highly inefficient, but it gave us a good foundation to get started.
Subway soldiered on, and as relationships with franchisees grew, so did the opportunities for international expansion.
We had to apply to Fred to go and develop stores in the UK. The beauty of all this was that we were on a, well, let's see if it works, and if it doesn't really matter. We've already got 2 stores.
We opened in Brighton, right on the South Coast. As soon as that logo went up, because it's all about the recognition of the brand, that as soon as the store opened up, between Americans, Canadians, Australians, and even the Japanese, they
gave us our
almost
start.
flocked to the store. You could see them running down the street.
We actually saw people running.
Because this was the first Subway store in the UK. So that was exciting. Then selling it to the actual British that weren't familiar with the brand, that took a little bit of work.
Behind the scenes, Subway was riding a sharp learning curve as their storefronts continued to fill the map.
Singaporeans are very into their food, and I knew that they would be accepting of a good product. As long as it was a good product, it would go over well. Except that the challenge was bread. People don't eat sandwiches in Singapore then very much. And so trying to get people to eat sandwiches was a real challenge.
The region I cover goes from Pakistan, where you have different languages. Turkey has a different language. The Middle East goes with the Arabic language. And the African continent even goes with different languages. So South Africa, first language is English, and then you go to other countries where English is not really the first language. So wide diversity of cultures and religions and languages, and that's really interesting to work with.
The countries they deal with are well-developed and wealthy, such as the Cayman Islands, all the way to the extremely poor, such as Nicaragua or Bolivia. Each have their own different characteristics. A lot of people make mistakes of thinking Latin America, well, they all speak Spanish or Portuguese and it's all just one area. And actually each country is very distinct.
A team of experts had to be employed to better understand the logistics of each country.
The way that the organization is structured is we have divided the world into various regions, and we have regional directors who would be the leaders of their regions, and we may have some sub-regions under them.
We had to develop a team of people that could run stores, plus we had to get a team of customers. Now, once you start crossing borders, difficulty magnifies. Not only do you have nobody who knows what they're doing and no customers, you have different laws, different cultures, different supply lines.
Subway needed a strategic plan.
We realized after we spent all the time and expense and legal fees, etc., to go into these countries, we'd show up and say, well, gee, we have a potential for maybe 5 stores. That was a lot of expense for only 5 stores.
There's been certainly a lot of either customs or religious law or cultural forays that require us to adapt. So you take a look at India, for example, they're primarily vegetarian and certainly no beef would be on the menu. And the same thing goes for the Middle East countries, the Muslim countries, where you wouldn't have pork on the menu.
For Subway, one of the keys to their international success was to adapt to each culture, but keep the basic product the same.
There are a lot of local flavors. Some want a bit of a spicier flavor. So we have spicier sauces or cheeses or mixes.
A very famous product in Australia which was developed, it's called the Aussie chicken fillet. And it is very much a local product. It's a very flavoursome chicken product, and it's one of our top sellers.
We had sandwiches with shrimps, we had with salmon, and as we see it for all the stores, the shrimps and salmon last summer, when we launched it, it was very high. We had high sales for this, and people like it.
The paneer tikka with the mint sauce is fantastic. And they have like potato sandwich. It's a bit, sounds a bit odd, but it tastes good.
Pakistan, where they like spicy sandwiches and especially chicken, so we have a sandwich called chicken tikka. South Africa, on the other hand, they have like one of those great local sandwiches called chicken mayo. So we have literally chicken mixed with a lot of mayonnaise put in a sandwich.
People might think that in Israel we should have the restaurant, or think the restaurant are kosher. But most of the restaurants in Israel are regular food, same as Subway all over the world, non-kosher with cheese. We don't have pork in Israel.
Subway sandwiches are now known and loved in several thousand locations worldwide. As with any success story, there were a lot of valuable lessons learned along the way.
When we first started developing internationally, we were a business of English only, which obviously is going to impede your ability to develop quickly. We had since started to develop training centers, and we do have training centers all around the world.
And it's through emails, live conferences, conference calls, you name it. That's how we are reaching our franchisees in, extreme locations, as far as, the extreme south of Argentina, the end of our region here. But technology is definitely the way that we are able to get that information out there in as fast as we can.
A lot of it is people and finding the right people, and then providing the right support on the local level through the staff that we hire, through the development agents that we recruit. They're really both the leaders in their respective areas and countries.
With the aid of one of our consultants, we built a proprietary software. We'll look at a country and we'll look at the GDP, we'll look at the business climate, we'll look at the franchise development, fast food development, anything in the overall business opportunity sector, and say, yeah, that's worth going, we can open a lot of stores there, or no, it's a developing country, let's wait a little while.
And so we're very resourceful, and it's keeping calm, always being flexible, always having a plan B or plan C, being ready and being proactive to help prevent things from happening. And this is the way in developing countries you really have to work and be flexible and adaptable.
If you look at the opportunity and the population of the planet and the number of restaurants that we have, we've got nowhere to go but up. We're only at the tip of the iceberg.